The doll arrived the same day the neighbor's dog stopped barking. It was already inside the house when we moved in, sitting on the dining room cabinet like it had been waiting for us. White porcelain face, glassy blue eyes. A child's smile stretched just a little too wide. It wore a lace dress yellowed with age. Stiff was something that didn't feel like fabric anymore. The realtor said it came with the house. My wife laughed and said we'd throw it out later. We didn't. The first night, I woke up to the sound of plates clinking, not crashing, just soft, careful taps, like someone testing the edge of a knife against porcelain. I found the doll in the kitchen, sitting on the table, its feet dangling over the edge. I was sure it had been in the cabinet before. I told myself one of the kids moved it. In the morning, our youngest wouldn't eat. She kept staring at the doll and whispering that it smelled like pennies. When I touched it to move it back, my fingers came away warm, not room temperature, warm like skin. That afternoon, the neighbors across the street loaded their car in silence. No shouting, no arguing, just boxes, black trash bags, and faces gray with something heavy behind the eyes. That night, the doll wasn't smiling anymore. Its mouth was open. The next morning, there was blood under the table, not a puddle, not a smear. Thin lines like something had been dragged carefully across the floor and cleaned badly afterward. My wife said it must have come from raw meat, maybe a package leaking. We don't buy meat in bulk. We don't eat breakfast meat. I didn't argue. I wiped it up. The rag turned rust-colored and stiff before I finished. By noon, the house smelled wrong, sweet and metallic. The kids stayed in their rooms without being told. When I passed our son's door, I heard him crying and saying, "It's counting us." I opened the door too fast and he screamed like I'd hit him. He pointed past me, down the hallway, toward the dining room. The doll was standing now. Not leaning, not propped, standing on its own feet in the middle of the room, head tilted slightly, as if listening. Its porcelain hands were red at the fingertips. One of its fingers was chipped, and something dark had soaked into the crack. I grabbed it. This time it wasn't warm, it was hot. I burned my palms and dropped it. When it hit the floor, it didn't break. It made a dull, wet sound instead. That evening, the neighbor's house across the street went quiet. No lights, no movement, just an open front door swinging slowly in the wind. The doll had moved back to the table. There were 4 chairs pulled out. One too many. We heard the screaming just after midnight. It didn't come from our house. It came from across the street. Short, broken screams that cut off too fast, like someone choking on them. My wife grabbed her phone and called the police. I watched from the window. The neighbors' lights flickered on one by one, room to room, like something was moving through the house and switching them as it went. Then the screaming stopped. Every light went out at once. Behind me, porcelain clicked. I turned slowly. The doll sat at the head of the table, legs crossed now. There was something on its dress, dark, wet stains blooming through the lace, soaking downward. The smell hit hard enough to make me gag. Our youngest started coughing, not crying, coughing, thick, wet sounds like her throat was filling. My wife rushed to her room. I followed and froze in the doorway. The child was on her bed, eyes open, mouth stretched wide, trying to breathe. Tiny red fingerprints were blooming around her neck, not adult-sized, small, perfectly sized to match porcelain hands. In the hallway, the doll was closer than it should have been. Its mouth was open wider now, the inside not hollow anymore. Something dark moved behind the porcelain teeth. The police never came. By morning, our daughter was cold, and the doll was clean again. There were only 3 chairs at the table now. It was still hungry. We tried to leave. That was the mistake. By noon, the car wouldn't start. The battery was dead, but the dashboard lights flickered like something was still drinking from it. My wife packed bags anyway. She kept saying we'd walk. That distance mattered. When she opened the front door, the doll was sitting on the porch, legs neatly together, blocking the threshold. Its head turned toward her, not fast, not slow, precise. My son started screaming behind us. I ran back down the hall and found him pressed against the wall, eyes fixed on his closet. The door was open. Inside, hanging from the rod, were tiny porcelain fingers tied together with shoelaces. They clicked softly as the house shifted. The doll was inside again, closer now, close enough that I could see hairline cracks spreading across its face. Each one darkened from the inside like veins. Its eyes weren't glass anymore. They were wet, tracking, choosing. It lifted one hand and pointed at my wife. The house reacted before we did. Doors slammed, windows sealed shut with a sound like bones snapping into place. The smell of pennies flooded every room. My wife backed away, shaking her head, whispering no, like that word still had power. The doll stepped forward. Each step left a print, not porcelain, bare feet, child-sized, wet, and moving fast. My wife ran. The doll didn't chase her right away. It turned its head toward me instead, slow and deliberate, like it wanted me to understand the choice. Its mouth opened and closed once, making a soft clicking sound, almost thoughtful. Then it moved. It didn't walk like before. It skittered, limbs jerking at the wrong angles, porcelain joints popping as it crossed the room too fast to follow. My wife barely made it to the kitchen before it reached her. She slammed the door, but the wood split instantly, hands punching through from the other side. Small, pale, cracking hands that bent until bone showed beneath the glaze. I grabbed a chair and swung. The impact shattered part of its shoulder, revealing something dark and pulsing inside like meat wrapped in ceramic. It didn't scream. It laughed, a thin, breathy sound that came from everywhere at once. The kitchen floor was slick. My wife slipped. The doll was on her before I could reach her. Its fingers sank into her throat, deeper than fingers should go, crushing, digging, rearranging what kept her alive. I pulled until my arms burned, until my hands slid in blood. When it was done, it let go. My wife didn't fall. She stayed where she was, folded wrong, eyes open and empty. The doll wiped its hands on her shirt. Then it looked at my son and pulled out the last chair. I made the choice for him. I grabbed my son and ran to the basement. The stairs screamed under our weight. Behind us, porcelain cracked and popped, fast, excited. The basement door slammed shut on its own. I shoved a shelf against it and held my son tight while the house went quiet. Too quiet. Then the knocking started. Not fists, knuckles, small, polite, tapping in sets of 4. "Dinner," something whispered. My wife's voice, wrong in the mouth that used it. The door bowed inward. Cracks spread through the wood like frost. I knew it wouldn't stop. I knew it never stopped. Families weren't victims. They were portions. I pushed my son toward the crawl space and told him not to come out. He didn't argue. He was already broken enough to listen. When the door finally split, the doll came through alone. Its body was ruined now, Cracked, smeared, leaking, but it moved with purpose. It climbed onto the last step and sat like a child waiting to be served. I stepped forward. It smiled. The next morning, the house was empty. Police found one adult body in the basement. No child. No doll. Just 4 chairs at the table upstairs. If you ever find a porcelain doll that comes with the house, count the chairs. If there's one extra, it's not for guests. I took the night shift at the nursery because no one else would. They said the kids slept better without parents hovering, that the dolls helped calm them. I believed that right up until the first door locked behind me. There were 12 cribs, 12 small bodies breathing in uneven rhythms. The dolls sat between them, stitched smiles, glass eyes angled just slightly wrong like they were listening. I checked the cameras. Every feed showed the same thing. Rows of sleeping children, nothing moving. That was when the hallway lights went out. I tried the main door. The handle turned, but the door didn't open. The magnetic lock stayed red. No signal. No backup power. I told myself it was a drill, some stupid management test. Then I heard fabric dragging across tile. One of the dolls wasn't in its chair anymore. I moved fast to the nearest crib. The child inside was awake, eyes open, mouth stretched, in a silent cry. The doll was standing on the mattress, weight bending its legs, small hands pressed into the child's chest. I grabbed it and felt resistance, real muscle under cloth, something pulling back. When I tore it away, the child didn't move. The other dolls began to slide on their chairs at the same time. The room filled with soft impacts as dolls hit the floor. Not falling, landing. Their heads tilted in unison. Toward the cribs, toward the children, I backed up, dragging the dead weight of the doll I'd pulled off, then dropped it when its fingers dug into my wrist hard enough to break skin. The cameras flickered. Every monitor went black except one. Nursery 3. My room. Live. On the screen, I watched myself standing there, shaking. Behind me, dolls were climbing into cribs. Not attacking fast. Careful, like they'd done this before. I ran to the emergency call button. It clicked, went dead. No alarm, no response. From one crib, a child started coughing, short, wet gasps. A doll pressed its face inches from the child's mouth, inhaling every breath like it needed it. I grabbed a chair and swung. The impact cracked porcelain, and something inside screamed. High, thin, furious. The doll collapsed, but the child didn't wake, didn't move. That scream changed the room. The dolls stopped being quiet. Stitching split. Jaws opened wider than they should. Tiny feet began running, slapping against tile. I felt something tug my pant leg and looked down to see a doll climbing me. Teeth clicking inches from my knee. The door behind me unlocked with a soft beep, and every doll turned toward it. I slammed the door shut instead of running. The dolls hesitated for half a second, like that wasn't in the script. Then they changed tactics. Half of them rushed me. The rest turned back to the cribs. I grabbed the fallen chair and wedged it under the handle. The door rattled as something small but strong hit it from the other side. Tiny fists, tiny bodies throwing themselves again and again. Behind me, a child screamed, loud this time, alive. I spun around in time to see 3 dolls holding one kid down while another climbed onto his face. It didn't stab, it didn't bite. It pressed its mouth over his and sealed it there, porcelain lips fusing to skin. The kid thrashed, feet kicking the rails, nails tearing at fabric until the movement slowed, until it stopped. The doll lifted its head. Its mouth was wet. Something warm ran down my leg. I hadn't noticed I'd been hurt. One of the dolls had gotten teeth into my calf. I kicked it into the wall and felt bone crack. It kept crawling. The monitors came back on. Every screen showed different nurseries, all of them active, and a message appeared across the feed, white text on black. Staff presence detected. Redistribution required. The message stayed on the screens while the dolls adjusted their grip on the children, like they were waiting for instructions. Then the vents opened. I heard it before I saw it. Plastic scraping metal, bodies forcing themselves through spaces too small for bone. Dolls began dropping from the ceiling, hitting the floor hard enough to crack tiles. Some landed wrong, limbs twisted backward. They stood anyway. Redistribution meant movement. The dolls stopped killing and started carrying. They lifted children from the cribs with disturbing care, arms under backs, heads supported like nurses. The ones already dead were taken too. I realized then that death wasn't the end of the process. It was just a step. I tried to grab one child. The doll holding her turned its head slowly and opened its mouth. Inside was not stuffing. It was layered pink muscle, wet and working. It screamed directly into my face, sound sharp enough to make my ears ring, and 3 more dolls hit me from behind. One, they dragged me to the floor. Small weight, massive force. Hands pinned my arms. Something knelt on my chest, and I felt ribs creak. A doll climbed onto my face, its porcelain forehead pressing against mine. Up close, I saw fingerprints burned into its glaze. Child-sized, it whispered in a dozen overlapping voices, all soft, all tired. "Don't struggle, you're late. We need you too." They didn't bite my face. They didn't kill me. They carried me, hands under my arms, under my knees, dolls lifting me with the same careful precision they used on the children. My body refused to cooperate. Shock locked my muscles. Breath came shallow, vision tunneling as they dragged me through the hall. Every nursery door was open now. Inside each one, dolls worked in rows. Some cleaned blood from cribs with rags made of hair. Some stitched torn dolls back together using thread pulled from children's blankets. Others stood motionless beside the walls, heads tilted, listening to something I couldn't hear. They took me to the storage room at the end of the corridor. I'd never been inside. Staff weren't allowed. The door opened. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with dolls. Hundreds of them, old ones, new ones, some still breathing. In the center of the room sat a metal table. Straps, tools laid out neatly, sewing needles, bone saws scaled down, but sharp. A doll climbed onto my chest and pressed its forehead to mine again. Its voice came out clearer now, older. "Children break too easily," it said. "They stop. You don't." The straps tightened around my wrists and ankles. Behind the doll, I saw a familiar face staring back at me from a shelf. My face, painted, smiling, waiting. They worked without rush, skin peeled in careful sheets. I felt everything. They had learned where to cut so I wouldn't pass out, where to pull so nerves stayed alive. My screams didn't slow them. The dolls listened, adjusted, improved. The one with my face watched from the shelf, glass eyes tracking every movement. When they lifted it down, it was warm. They stretched my skin over porcelain, stapled it tight, stitched the edges with thread pulled from inside my own body. I felt myself being reduced to spare parts, Organs sorted, bones cleaned, muscle trimmed down to what they needed to move. When it was done, they stood me upright in front of a mirror. I was smaller, lighter. My mouth smiled even though I didn't want it to. When I tried to scream, it came out soft and soothing, the kind of sound that makes children calm down. The nursery lights came back on. Morning staff arrived to 12 empty cribs. No blood, no alarms. Just dolls sitting neatly in their chairs, cleaner than before. One of them was new. That night, a child cried for their mother. I turned my head toward the sound. My legs moved on their own.